Welcome to Conversations with B'nai B'rith International. I'm CEO Dan Mariaschin. Thank you for joining us today. A world that remembers the Holocaust, a world without genocide. That's the motto of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IHRA as it is known, the organization uniting governments and experts across the globe to strengthen, advance, and promote Holocaust education, remembrance, and research. With membership now with 34 countries and counting, IHRA is the only international body working exclusively on preserving the memory of the Holocaust and tackling its root causes that persist today. Following the chairmanship of Germany in 2020, Greece now leads IHRA, beginning in April of this year. And we're pleased to have with us today Ambassador Chris Lazaris, the new chair of IHRA, heading the organization on behalf of the Greek Presidency, and IHRA Secretary General Dr. Kathrin Meyer, the head of IHRA's permanent office. Ambassador Lazaris brings a wealth of experience in international cooperation as part of the Greek Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working in the Western Balkans, NATO, and as the Director of Intercultural and Interfaith Dialogue. Along with his IHRA assignment, he's also currently serving as Greece's Special Envoy for Libya. Dr. Meyer has served as Secretary General of IHRA since 2008. In her role, she implements the priorities of the IHRA Chair and IHRA's member countries and coordinates, together with her colleagues at the IHRA Permanent Office, the activities of its member and observer countries, as well as projects and work of the organization's expert working groups and specialized committees. Today, I'll be speaking with Ambassador Lazaris and Dr. Meyer about the priorities of the Greek presidency, the special projects IHRA has developed in recent years, and its overall progress, as well as the challenges and trends regarding Holocaust remembrance, the fight against anti-Semitism today, and the remedies that IHRA is proposing. Ambassador Lazaris, Dr. Meyer, thank you both for being with us today. Well, we'll begin with Ambassador Lazaris. Let's talk about the Greek presidency. Tell us about your main priorities that you've set forth and your expectations for this year at the front of IHRA.
Right. Our priorities focus on education. Why education? Because Greece has one of the most advanced curricula on teaching the Holocaust in Europe. And so having such an experience under the belt, we felt that we should start from our point of strength. So education, but education with a twist is not exactly, it's not just what we teach in the classroom or the assignments given to pupils, but mainly teaching in practical ways, day-to-day life, within the state administration, within the business world, and with a special, how to put it, reference, if you wish, to what I call the digital battlefield. So the idea is to see how we can perpetuate the memory, keep the memory, Holocaust, and at the same time evolve further tools to combat distortion and denial of the Holocaust, and use these tools also to fight extremist ideologies that are unfortunately resurging again, especially as I said, on the internet and social media. So we're taking our lead from the previous German presidency. They started, or actually it was the Luxembourg presidency, then the German, and then us. We are following the same track of teaching the Holocaust as well. And we hope our contribution this year will be precisely to focus on the digital battlefield. I like this expression, and I picked it up somewhere, so you will bear with me. The other thing that we want to do, of course, is to strengthen the IHRA's image as a premier provider of the ideological and legal ammunition we employ in this fight against denial of the Holocaust and against extremist political resurgences. And of course, we are very much involved in all the aspects that are connected to field of litigation and further on. To give you a very broad outline of what we're doing, we're already in the second month of our presidency. We have already something like 12 events under the belt. They have gone very well. 3 of these have been organized together with North Macedonia, who are a member, who are a candidate for full membership to the IHRA. They have done a very good job, frankly. And as for the rest, we have had events organized together with the 𝐏𝐫𝐞𝐬𝐿, with the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, and with other entities, always under the guidance of IHRA or the participation of IHRA PO. Then this week we are going, of course, to focus on the finishing touches on the first plenary. The first plenary is already more or less ready to go. It will start on the 31st of May up to the 10th of June. After that, we are looking forward to the second part of the year, in which hopefully we will be rid of the constraints imposed by the pandemic, and therefore be able to organize things also in physical form. I don't know about you, I belong to the previous generation, and all this mumbo jumbo really gets on my nerves. We hope to see our friends from up close. Which means first, by all means, the second plenary in Thessaloniki, which used to be called, if I remember correctly, Melek Israel, the Queen of Israel.
It was the Jerusalem of the Balkans.
The Jerusalem of the Balkans also. And then on that occasion, we're going to have a number of cultural events, plus the inauguration of the Holocaust Museum. We already have a Jewish Museum of Greece with branches in the cities where there has been a significant Jewish presence, and sometimes there still is. And then we have prepared a number of commemorative events together with our Central Israelite Council. Mainly the north of Greece, but not Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is already too much in the focus. So this time we're going to shift to Thrace. Thrace is a place that's a bit out of the way even for the other communities in Greece. So, but it has a great history of Jewish presence in the past, and unfortunately they were that target of ethnic cleansing, as we know, during the Holocaust. But we are going to have also commemorative events further south in central West Greece, at Presidency, which was one of the premier centers of Sephardic culture before the war. And of course, we are prepared to end our presidency first with a conference precisely on internet, social media, and extremism and the denial of the Holocaust. It will assemble, hopefully in physical form or in hybrid form, jurists, law enforcement officers, digital technology specialists, and the idea would be to perhaps define a set of recommendations on the matter. And on the more formal side, we expect to inaugurate the permanent expedition of Greece at Auschwitz, most probably by the President of the Republic herself. So it's a big program. We are going by steps, because it is big and our assets are what they are. So we depend very much on the PO's help, especially keep us on the right path, but not only, and on all our friends for suggestions and counsel. So we expect.
Well, it's an ambitious agenda. We certainly wish you well with it, particularly the program in Greece. Turn to Dr. Meyer. Help us contextualize what the ambassador has laid out in terms of the program, and how do the priorities of the Greek presidency build on the efforts of IHRA throughout the German presidency and before, which the ambassador has referenced.
Well, thank you so much for having us and explaining a little bit about our work, which we feel like, especially during the pandemic, showed it's more urgent than ever, actually. So we go into our second digital year as IHRA, and there's a red line that leads through the German presidency, the Greek presidency, and also the Luxembourg presidency, and will continue for the next years. IHRA has adopted a strategy a couple of years ago, and this strategy is that we focus mainly on countering Holocaust distortion and safeguarding the historical record. Because one of the most alarming trends we see, and definitely we have seen it throughout this year, and we see it everywhere, but more than ever, is Holocaust distortion. Not so much Holocaust denial, but Holocaust distortion. The trivialization of the Holocaust and distortion of the Holocaust often goes hand in hand with extremist nationalism. It goes hand in hand with, of course, anti-Semitic movements. I would say there's not a single anti-Semitic ideology that doesn't have a distorting relationship to the Holocaust. So the mainstreaming of Holocaust distortion is something that is also like a stepping stone for anti-Semitism as we see it these days. And this is why this is one of our focuses. It was definitely one of the German focuses. Germany has established within the IHRA a task force, a global task force to counter distortion. We are being joined in our efforts as IHRA by our international partners, mainly the United Nations, UNESCO, the EU, but also others. We have launched together the Protect the Facts campaign. So these are all efforts that will continue through the Greek presidency and beyond.
Well, certainly distortion and denial are really demand our immediate attention. You know, years ago, when I entered this field decades ago, and I would speak about the Holocaust, I would often say there will come a point where there will be no more victims who have tattoos on their arms to say, I was there, I saw it, I experienced this terrible barbarity. And that number, of course, is because of the biological clock is simply diminishing. So those witnesses who really carried the ball for so long, now we have a situation where it falls on the rest of us to really meet those assertions that are made, these distortions and the denial as well. Ambassador Lazaris, you spoke about the need to educate and raise awareness of the Holocaust. You've touched on the efforts, you and Dr. Meyer, to tackle denial and distortion online, and I agree with you. A battlefield is a good way to portray it, the online battlefield. These are two key areas, along with others that are deeply troubling to us. And I'd like to ask you particularly about the unprecedented wave of anti-Semitism that has come out of pro-Palestinian protests worldwide, along with the trivialization of the Holocaust, the gross comparisons with Nazis, and the calls for violence against Jews. And we've seen this just the other day. One video went viral about something that happened in Los Angeles. So the question really is, what is IHRA doing on this front end, which is kind of a real-time situation? And what are you doing to encourage others, governments and other stakeholders, to do at this particular point? Go ahead, Mr. Ambassador, sure.
Okay. Okay, first of all, we were among the first agencies to react to what was happening. There was a statement by the chair himself, which we crafted together with Kathrin on the very first instances of the events in Gaza and the events on the streets of Europe. Then, as you probably know, I'm an active ambassador of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was consulted by my minister before he embarked on a tour of the area. As we speak, he's now in Egypt. We came forward with a very strong statement saying that Israel has the right to defend itself as any other country in the world, and that we condemn the lobbing of rockets by Hamas into urban areas. Now, as for the events in Europe, we are following closely the working definition of IHRA, meaning that if a statement or any other gesture is critical of Israeli policy per se, okay, this is something that is more or less legitimate, but the moment it steps over into a general appeal against Jews, Judaism, or if they go into comparison with what the Nazis did or whatever, by all means, this is, in case of Greece, for example, it's criminal activity. The working definitions of IHRA are already part of the Greek penal legislature. So the prosecutors in Greece, at least, are in charge with following up these cases and prosecute offenders. As for IHRA, we will keep our watch over what's happening in Europe, and in coordination, we are going to react. I think that we have our work cut out for us for the coming days. So, as I said, at this stage, we are following and taking down events and responding adequately at each point that we believe that we have to react. The truth is that what's happening right now in Gaza, as far as we are concerned, is indefensible from the point of view, or from our point of view, first of all, and then now, as we see, Hamas is a terrorist organization. Therefore, this is even more of a reason not to condone its behavior. We have to pass now the report to Kathrin to tell the story from her perspective.
Yeah, I'd like, Dr. Meyer, I'd like to hear your perspective on it, and also, and this is for both. I mean, let's talk about the IHRA definition, because this is really the baseline. It is so important, and it's important for many reasons, because it addresses the variants of anti-Semitism. But to me, the most important part is that it addresses contemporary anti-Semitism. It's not just looking at classic, it's looking at contemporary, which we are dealing with right now. So the IHRA coalition members, individual governments, institutions, football associations, universities have endorsed the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism. And I'm curious in responding here about those who now are introducing alternative definitions, which frankly, from our point of view, those definitions clearly open the door for further demonization of Israel, which is right there in the definition, in the IHRA definition. So how can we reaffirm the IHRA definition as the one that comes closest, because we believe it does, to capturing the full spectrum of anti-Semitic manifestations? So Dr. Meyer, if you would.
Thank you. First, let me stress also that when it comes to the current political situation, the chair issued a statement. He referred to that, and in this statement, we also made it very clear that while freedom of speech and protest are essential pillars of our democracies, we must unequivocally oppose all attacks targeting Jewish places of worship, as well as anti-Semitic rhetoric, including holding Jews collectively responsible for events now developing in the Middle East. So there is a clear line between anti-Semitism and freedom of expression, and this is something that we make very clear. And I think, coming back to your first question before I answer your second one on the definition, what is being called for now is political action, and it is also denunciation of what's going on. So we need the political leadership, the social leadership, we need religious leaders, and we need influencers, if we talk about the internet, to speak out against the anti-Semitism that we see right now. It is important that as many voices as possible are being raised to condemn the anti-Semitism that is going on. No kind of protest, no matter what I am demonstrating for or against, justifies anti-Semitism or hatred of any kind. So this is the bottom line here. And you mentioned our working definition on anti-Semitism. I think the strength of our definition definitely is the fact that it is a product of consensus among 34 member countries, and every new country that will join the IHRA, this alliance, will also endorse this definition. And you also mentioned, and I'm glad you mentioned some of the examples that are my favorite examples, who adopted this definition. So the definition now is being adopted by many, many of the member countries and beyond on the national level. It is being adopted by religious groups, including several Muslim groups, organizations have adopted this definition. And you mentioned the football clubs, and also me being German and located in Germany. In German football stadiums, we have a problem with anti-Semitism since many years, and it's not that those responsible in the clubs wouldn't know about it. It's difficult to acknowledge a problem if you don't have a tool. And what our definition does, all our definitions do actually, they are a tool of empowerment, because they are a tool for awareness raising. And if you do awareness raising and you offer a tool that can tackle a problem, it's easier to acknowledge this problem. And this is what this definition definitely provides. And this is why it is being adopted so widely. And you mentioned that there are other definitions out there. Yes, there are. And actually, IHRA welcomes everybody who joins the fight against anti-Semitism. And if some feel the need for developing other definitions, well, that might be. For us, again, we have the definition developed, and we have such strong worldwide support for it that we hope that even more will join us and our fight against anti-Semitism. We certainly use it within the IHRA. Most IHRA member countries have adopted it on the national level. So I think, and what I can also say after being also for decades already working in this field, the adoption of the working definition has led to it was a game changer, and it was a game changer in a way that until this definition was adopted, we were often confronted with the question whether there is anti-Semitism, yes or no. I haven't heard this discussion anymore since we have this definition. Since we have this definition adopted, there's often a question, can this or that be considered anti-Semitism? And then it needs to be discussed. But that there is anti-Semitism in, unfortunately, pretty much every society, that is not a question anymore. And this is one of the strengths, I would say, this IHRA tool.
Well, there's no question that it was a game changer, has been a game changer. The idea of crossing the red lines, which Ambassador Lazaris talked about, this is really what makes it entirely different. I'll tell you, I was present in Stockholm 21 years ago when this idea began. Their OSCE held several conferences, very important conferences on anti-Semitism. I remember in 2004, I think it was former U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell who talked about this idea of crossing the red line on this criticism of Israel, which is kind of, was hiding anti-Semitism underneath. So it really is extremely important. Let me just ask you one question, Dr. Meyer. I'm going to go back to the ambassador, because this is probably a good point. You mentioned the countries that are up for membership. What are the requirements? I think it would be important for our viewers to know that. What are the requirements if a country seeks to become an IHRA member country? What is it that they need to do?
It's a kind of lengthy process, I have to say, because the IHRA, this alliance is non-legally binding. That means there are no international treaties or so. So it is, and we need the commitment. And when we talk about commitments, you mentioned the Stockholm Forum, and the Stockholm Declaration came out of it, which was the basis and still is the basis of our work. We renewed our commitment. Member countries renewed the commitment last year in January on the ministerial level. So very high political level, an IHRA ministerial declaration was adopted by all member countries, because back then in Stockholm, we had very few member countries. Many attended the Stockholm Forum, but IHRA had very few member countries. Now at 34, we have adopted a new ministerial declaration, renewing and widening our commitment. And so every country that is interested in joining us has to go through a kind of lengthy process. We have a three-step way to full membership. We have the observer status, we have the liaison status, and we have the full membership. I always call that observer status is dating, liaison status is being engaged, and when you walk down the aisle, that's full membership. So it is in a way pretty easygoing, because a country approaches us, and Ambassador Lazaris will probably talk about the country that will most likely be accepted as an observer country at the Athens plenary. So we have a candidate also for full membership in the Thessaloniki plenary. So countries express their interest. They start joining the meetings with a full delegation. So that means the experts of these countries join our working groups, and the governmental representatives join the plenary as in an observer capacity. And then when they feel really ready to take the next step, they become a liaison country upon plenary decision. That means a little heavier involvement already. That means doing projects together, and full membership is obviously full membership. So it's done in very close cooperation with the membership. We see ourselves as a network, and it's an alliance that is up for the same thing. So we assist each other. We talk about challenges. We share good practices. And the experts guide also the political level with regard to recommendations, how to implement particular policies, what the political level should have an eye on. This is how the IHRA definition on anti-Semitism came about. It was recommended by the Committee on Anti-Semitism and Holocaust Denial to the plenary. We have the Committee on the Roma, on the Genocide of the Roma has suggested a similar definition last year, which was adopted under the German presidency on Roma discrimination. And so this is how we work, and in close cooperation and partnership.
Ambassador Lazaris, when we think of Greece, we think of the foundations of European thought, culture, and civilization. Jewish tradition, Jewish culture, and Jewish life through history have been a part of that. Today, the European Commissioner for the European Way of Life, hailing from Greece, oversees the fight against anti-Semitism and to foster Jewish life. What best practices in the fight against anti-Semitism can we learn from Greece? And you've had a number of incidents over the last few years, desecration of memorials, graffiti. What can we learn from your experience in Greece in dealing with other national challenges elsewhere?
What I could call the star item for what we did, I don't know if it's how easy it would be to apply in other countries. As you know, among other legislation that we have adopted, we adopted a law against any political formation holding Nazi ideologies, and this is how we got the notorious Golden Dawn behind lock and key. But of course, this is quite drastic. I don't know how many societies can stomach that. Otherwise, we have for several years now a very efficient school program for teaching the younger generation, and we have also a number of seminars each year directed mainly at members of the administration. This year, there's going to be a big seminar for law enforcement officers that is being prepared and will take place just after the first plenary. There is also a seminar for members of the clergy of the Orthodox Church of Greece, which is important because this first time his body is opening to this kind of training. In general, we're being extremely vigilant on what is happening in terms of incidents. We do have incidents, fortunately not directed against physical persons or private property, but of course, before we disbanded Golden Dawn, there were several incidents against monuments, memorials, and this kind of public places. With Golden Dawn behind bars, this has dropped exponentially. So it's clear to us that most of the incidents we had in the past were actually directed centrally by this party or this organization. Of course, we have our share of idiots everywhere else. These are being picked off every time we do something. Police is after them. We have always investigations launched in case we have this kind of criminal behavior, and people responsible for that are prosecuted. Our laws are quite strict on that. We have one of the strictest anti-racist penal regimes in Europe, and I must say that we were also the first country in Europe to adopt and in the form of penal law, the working definitions of IHRA. So this we are working very hand in hand with. We were already working hand in hand with IHRA on this score. Well, best practices, as I told you, we try. As I say, we try to catch on young. I mean. We feel that in the generations of this beginning of the century, the ideologies that brought about the Holocaust are already largely unpalatable. So we start from a good point. And in fact, people that, for example, were involved with Golden Dawn were not teenagers or in their 20s. They were older people, 40-ish, more or less. So we believe that our teaching programs are quite efficient. And as I said, thanks also to the assistance we got from IHRA and the ideas we got from them. We are now trying to get into something more, turn more to the future, like exactly internet and social media. But of course, as I said, we have our share of videos like everybody else, and we are looking forward to cooperation with all entities and agencies that are of the same mind as we are to, if possible, obliterate totally this phenomenon.
We have time really for one more question, and we'll offer it to you both. We'll start with Dr. Meyer. The question is, looking beyond where we are today, the mission of the organization, the mission of IHRA is one that requires broad support, political will, and partnership across policy areas and amongst various social actors. There are a lot of moving parts in this process. So what do you think we need to see happen on a national, local, and international level to advance Holocaust remembrance and education? And the ambassador was just talking about it. Education is so important. If we talk about the Holocaust, and we're getting to that point now again where there are no survivors, we're 76 years beyond the end of the war and the end of the Holocaust. And for so many, unfortunately, this is ancient history, and we constantly have to renew and energize our efforts. So what do you think, if you had to make a couple of suggestions here, going forward, what would it be to advance Holocaust education and remembrance? Dr. Meyer.
Well, what we certainly need is, you mentioned, is a commitment of the policymakers. We need political commitment that is crucial. You mentioned also that we have fewer and fewer survivors with us to share their testimony. That means that Holocaust-related institutions, memorials, museums, and educational institutions, the need for these is growing and growing. At the same time, these institutions are facing funding cuts and serious issues. I mean, during the pandemic, 95% of all museums and memorial sites had to close down. They had to lay off their staff, many of their staff members, and so on. So it's a financial issue as well. It's not just a political commitment. Institutions need funding. They need funding in order to operate, and that is definitely important. But also the commitment on the political level to create what I would call a zero tolerance towards Holocaust denial and distortion and anti-Semitism. I think it's important that it's being made clear over and over and over again that anti-Semitism or Holocaust distortion or discrimination against Roma is not an opinion. It is not something that is being covered by freedom of expression, or it is a crime. Any kind of incitement to violence is a crime, and it needs to be reacted to accordingly. So I think a firm reaction when we see these things happen is absolutely crucial. And I think this is also what happens within the IHRA. An encouragement. Countries and governments encourage each other, reaffirm their commitments together. And I would also like to put emphasis here on the work that we are doing together with the international partners. So we have all big international institutions that also have a somehow related mandate to Holocaust remembrance or fighting anti-Semitism, also within our alliance as international permanent partners. We work very closely with them. The phenomena we're dealing with are global phenomena, global problems. So we need to tackle them as an international community, but it breaks down to the national level and to the very local level where activities are urgently needed.
And Ambassador Lazaris, a final word on the same subject. Well, I would say that the surest way to make the Holocaust endure as a memory would be to make it into a tool for the future, not just a museum exhibit. We see it as a dynamic life. The Holocaust can be a kind of, how to put it, a paradigm at the same time a kind of mind from which we can get the tools to fight extremist thought and extremist expression and action. In Greece, this has been a success. In fact, we have used our experience from initial partial confrontation with these kinds of ideologies to develop the legal arsenal that put our homegrown Nazis into jail. We find this experience positive. So the Holocaust as part of the future landscape for us is what will keep the memory alive. It will make it worth for younger generations to remember, to study, and to use to defend our democratic values and our free way of life.
Well, Ambassador Lazaris, Dr. Meyer, we appreciate your work preserving the memory of the Holocaust, fighting anti-Semitism, and you're sharing your insights with us today. And we wish you nothing but success. And you can be sure that we, B'nai B'rith, will be right there with you, encouraging more countries and organizations, associations to adopt the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, which is really so important. Well, our special thanks to Ambassador Chris Lazaris and Dr. Kathrin Meyer for joining me today, and thank you for tuning in to Conversations with B'nai B'rith. If you found this discussion of interest, make sure that you never miss a program by subscribing to the B'nai B'rith YouTube channel, liking us on Facebook, and following us on Twitter. And be sure to visit our website, bnaibrith.org, to learn more about our important work. Thanks again to my guests. See you again soon, everyone. Take care.